Trent Shan is the founder and CEO of Australia's #1 sales training company, Boom Sales. Sales expert and fast growth specialist and author of 2 business titles, Outlaw and The Naked Salesman. Not for the Average podcast exposes the secrets to extraordinary performance in sales, entrepreneurship and business growth. Warning, this show is not for the average.
Welcome to the Not For The Average podcast. I am your host, Trent Shan. Today we are joined by Dina Pozzo, the founder of Insium. And Dina is a leadership and development expert. And today we're going to be exploring the concept of courage. Dina, welcome.
Thank you. Very
nice
looking forward to this chat.
Oh, awesome. And today in particular, the date that we're filming this and recording this podcast, there's lots of turbulence in the world, obviously thanks to the coronavirus, the epidemic that we're all finding ourselves in. So this pod interview, I think, Dina, is very timely. And we're going to take an opportunity to talk about courage in business, but also, how do we demonstrate courage given the current situation that we all find ourselves in? Dina, are you safe and well there in St Kilda?
We are very safe and well, thank you for asking. We have been self-isolating for a couple of weeks now, which has its challenges, including sometimes needing to be courageous around that. But yes, we are well, thank you.
Oh, good to hear. Dina, your business, Insium, can you explain to our listeners what it is that you actually do?
Okay. So Trent, as you mentioned, I work in a space of leadership and change development, and perhaps I can answer that more fully as I explain my purpose. So my purpose is to open doors. These are doors that perhaps we've intentionally and firmly shut in the past. They're doors we may have wandered past without even noticing, or they might be doors in our future. And what I encourage people to do in my practice is to courageously open these doors and explore and honour what's on the other side. Because that helps them understand self better, which then helps them be the best version of themselves as a leader, as a team member, as a professional specialist, as a human being.
I like it. Opening doors. So finding those doors firstly, and then having the courage to be able to walk through them to what's on the other side.
Absolutely.
That sounds courageous. What in your definition, Dina, is courage? What does that look like?
Okay. There's all different types of courage, and there's lots of definitions of courage. And the definitions of courage can be sourced as far back as ancient philosophers. But these definitions of courage have evolved over time as society has valued different notions of courage. So, for example, we have physical courage, and this is probably what people are most familiar with. Physical courage is the courage demonstrated by firefighters, volunteers. And if you think of the bushfires of late last year, early this year in Australia, we saw a lot of courage being demonstrated. If you think of coronavirus right now, there's all the courage being demonstrated by our healthcare professionals who are doing all that they can to restore the health of those infected. So physical courage is where we put our own physicality at risk. We then have vital courage, and vital courage is about persevering through a disability or illness in the face of an uncertain outcome. So for an example of vital courage, an example is shown by the person who might be persevering through treatment for cancer when they're not sure of the prognosis. Again, if you think of today and people who have COVID-19 or are suffering COVID-19, they are persevering without a known treatment, and I've said that really badly. They're persevering without a known treatment. They're persevering to live. We then have moral courage. And moral courage is standing up for one's authentic beliefs and values in the face of disapproval or rejection. So examples of moral courage, and this is probably what we see mostly in workplaces, unless you are a firefighter, a paramedic or the like. Examples include whistleblowing, the person who stands up to bullying, the person who votes against the majority. And if you think again of today, and we look here in Australia, we had some state premiers making their own decisions which were contrary to those of our Prime Minister, as recently as last week.
Your definition of that is moral courage. Is there a fine line between moral courage and madness, Dina? Sometimes if you're standing out from the crowd, speaking against and going against the grain, so to speak, then of course there's judgment, isn't there?
Yes.
Ridicule. So that's a form of courage, is being able to have that moral. I talk a lot about the moral compass. But we're saying moral courage is the ability to speak up despite of judgment, despite of it flying in the wind of what others are saying or doing.
Absolutely. And Trent, what you've also identified there, courage is this beautiful skill. It's this beautiful strength that sits on a continuum. So if you think courage sits in the middle, at one end of the continuum, and I'm talking a long way away, we've got cowardice. But at the other end of the continuum, we've got recklessness. And again, a long way away. So it's this really fine line of sitting in this space of courage rather than tipping into recklessness or potentially tipping into cowardice.
Okay. I like that as a concept. Okay. Where is that line? And I guess the physical courage that you mentioned earlier, so we can relate to that as Australians, can't we, in terms of seeing that on the sporting field weekly?
Absolutely.
And that sort of resonates with a lot of people, the physicality, the physical courage. The first one is taking it back. So there's three there that you mentioned, Dina. The last one was moral courage.
Courage, yep.
Second one was physical courage. Sorry?
Yep. Or the three are physical courage, moral courage, and vital courage.
And vital courage.
Yeah.
So if we think of those concepts, how do they apply in the workplace specifically? Because I guess that's probably the theme that we're running with today is how do we show more courage in the workplace? Why is that important? But then obviously given the current climate, we're sort of linking it back to social courage and how we deal with the current climate that we all find ourselves in. So just take it back to that first question. How do those three things, or how does courage apply in the workplace? Yeah. And why is it important?
So if you think of the workplace, and let's think of the workplace last month, next month, and even today, as a matter of fact, you may, and I use the word may intentionally, and I'll come back to that, you may need courage to provide someone with feedback. Anytime there's a risk associated, anytime we feel vulnerable, we need courage. Without risk, without vulnerability, there isn't courage. So back to the workplace, you may need courage to give feedback. You may need courage to be clear on expectations about equity, whether it's about recognition, promotion, or a pay increase. You may need courage to ask for a performance review. You may need courage to express a mental health need in the workplace, to ask for a career break, to make a decision to not be tied to a role that doesn't enable you to be your best self. You might even need courage to own your strengths, to own what you're good at and be able to express those. And that's every day. The reason I say may is because courage is very subjective. So what I need courage to do, you may not, and vice versa. To what I consider to be a courageous act, you may not, and vice versa. And if you think about today with COVID-19 and workplaces, you may need courage to make the decision to lock the office door and have all your staff work from home. You might need courage to say, well, they're telling me I have to go into the workplace, but that doesn't sit comfortably with me. So I may need courage to say, I'm going to work from home. As a leader of a team that has their team working from home, you might need the courage to trust that they're actually being courageous. You might need the courage to, if you are working from home, you might need the courage to connect with clients, yes, and or colleagues who don't seem to need to connect as often as you do. And you might even just need the courage to accept that you're doing the best you can possibly be doing in the current situation.
And no doubt everybody is doing their best or trying to do their best in very unfamiliar territory.
Absolutely.
Dina, do you have to be a leader to demonstrate courage? Because when we think of courage, we think of
Absolutely.
courageous leaders, we think of sporting captains, we think of politicians, business chiefs, etc. So do you necessarily have to be a leader to be courageous?
No, absolutely not. I'm a big believer, as I'm sure you are, Trent, also, that leadership, it's not about title, it's not about the corner office. Anyone can choose to be a leader and demonstrate leadership behaviour. So that being the case, anyone can choose to be courageous. And, when we think of
courage is a choice.
Creating,
Sorry to cut you off there. Courage is a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely. If I stop and have a think, what will I do in this situation? And Trent, this leads me to our courage questionnaire, where for every situation we ask 3 questions. How worthwhile is this act? So if we use the example of giving feedback, how worthwhile is it to give feedback to this person? How risky is it to give feedback to this person? And then based on those 2 things, how willing am I to act? And there's no magic formula around this, but if we stop and think, we're intentional in our choice, and we're more likely to sit in courage rather than tip into recklessness or tip into cowardice, which I mentioned earlier.
Oh, that is powerful, Dina. Particularly, all those 3 courage questionnaire points that you mentioned are powerful. The last one resonated with me. The willingness to act.
Yeah.
Is a choice.
It's a choice. And what I must say is sometimes it actually takes courage not to act.
Oh. Well, you mentioned that line earlier between recklessness and courage.
Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
So sometimes it takes courage not to act. It's often at the values level where we're, because morals, ethics, values, they're all on a continuum in and of themselves. And so it's often when our values and our ethics are pushed, but sometimes we actually need to sit with that and sit with the discomfort of that and not act.
That is a whole nother topic, I think. I was very tempted to go off the running sheet there, Dina. Very tempted. I want to get you back. I'm loving this. I'd love to explore what are values, and how do we use them, the moral compass, how do we use them to navigate? How does that affect our decision making, our choices? Yeah. That's something I think our audience would get a lot of value out of. Today I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be disciplined and stick to a running sheet.
Sure.
Now, with those things, the choice, you have a choice. It can involve risk and vulnerability.
Yep.
We don't have to be a leader to be courageous. So that's not really excuse. I can't be courageous. I'm not a leader. I'm not equipped to do that. No, if you understand, that probably is why the link to values is really important, because that will determine your choices and your willingness to act. Yeah. What happens in the workplace, and we can maybe even think more broadly here, Dina, what happens in the absence of courage?
Sure. What I'll share with you actually is the research of Brené Brown. Her research is based on 400,000 sets of data over 20 years, and most recently she interviewed 150 C-suite leaders. And this is what they said happens in the absence of courage. Tough conversations don't happen. So I don't come and give you feedback. And instead of, in fact, talking to you, I talk about you. We certainly don't talk about our fears and feelings. And in the absence of talking about our fears and feelings, we actually, as leaders, as managers, we spend an inordinate amount of time managing unproductive behaviour. Trust goes out the door. We get stuck in setbacks. We don't, if I can use the phrase, bounce back. We have a lack of innovation because no one's willing to make a potential mistake. We actually get stuck in problem solving. Now, you might think, well, that's not a bad thing, but we don't sit in the ambiguity of problem identification. We actually go straight to problem solving. And there's a quote by Einstein that goes something like, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes in problem identification and 5 minutes in solving it. In the absence of courage, we are so concerned about not being inclusive and not being diverse that actually we do the exact opposite. We actually inadvertently are exclusive and not diverse. We shame and blame because it's far easier to shunt accountability. Our values, our organisational values, and even our personal values may as well just be, nicely framed on the wall. And we tend to look for perfectionism, or we tend to look for perfection. And what we know from a psychological point of view, perfection is associated with anxiety and depression. So we're actually, in the absence of courage, we're actually going downhill.
It sounds like we're crippled in the absence of courage.
It's
a crippling
I
affliction.
think that's a good
Some
summary.
of those things you're talking about are very counterintuitive and to progress and to growth in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
You may hear a little bit of ambient noise in the background, Dina, and we have the podcast coming live at you from my home office. And we have some builders here at the moment doing some renovations. We're going into recession, and my wife Kelly is doing her best to keep the economy going. God, that is courageous, Dina. Is that courage?
Well, I don't know. From your point of view, is it recklessness? I'm not answering that question.
I'm not going to answer that either because she's probably going to be listening to this. So it sounds like when the absence of courage, a lot of these things that I can certainly relate to hearing and coming across, and actually probably demonstrating myself at times.
Yeah.
So
great.
How do we check ourselves when we find ourselves lapsing into some of those behaviours? Does it come back to values? Do I need to just be really clear on those? Or is it just more being aware of when you're falling into or being seduced into those types of negative interactions or behaviours?
Yeah. Oh, look, Trent, it's all of the above and more. It's, if we think of, again, this is coming back to Brené's research. She's shown that there's 4 key skills to develop courage. And one of them is living fully into your values. Another one is vulnerability. Then there's trust, and there's also building resilience. If we think of checking self, that's a whole topic of self-awareness. And how do we build self-awareness? We build self-awareness by reflecting. And that could be 5 minutes at the end of the day. Who was I today? What did I do? What am I most proud of today? Also, what didn't quite go, how I would have liked it to go today. So reflection's a big part of self-awareness. And the other is getting feedback. Getting feedback from someone you trust and you value, and also who's going to tell you the truth. So someone who's not going to just tell you what you want to hear.
Ooh, that's good. So you have to, it can be confronting getting constructive feedback, because you have to remove the ego.
Absolutely.
And you have to be open. You have to, the growth mindset we talk a lot about. But you've just really triggered something. And I'm doing my best here to stay on track, but I'm struggling. Reflection you talked about as a way to develop self-awareness.
Yes.
I've committed through the coronavirus learning and the experiences we're all sharing, which are all new, committed to just being as positive as I can and sharing positivity with as many people as I can. I can very easily go to the dark places a lot of people go, but it's a choice not to. So everything I've been promoting has been positive. Some might say that's careless, it lacks compassion, but that's sort of my choice, that I want to keep promoting, keep people buoyant, keep people positive, focus on the positives.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and that might prove to be right or wrong, I'm not sure, but that is at the moment something we're all faced with. How do we navigate our way through it? What decisions do we make? What choices do we make? That's one of my choices. But the other is, I'm a big believer on this, and that is, at the moment, this place we find ourselves in is potentially an amazing opportunity as a circuit breaker to get everybody to rethink what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what's most important to them. that's looking at the positive side. I know that there is a glass half empty side to that as well, but the glass half full side is very much around really taking some time to slow down and really think about what the hell we're doing and what's most important to us. And that reflection element that you talk to on those three things there, I think is a part of that, is being able to reflect on, how we go about our lives, why we do the things we do. And I think that probably is a positive that we can, the hidden gem in all of this crisis are some of those things that I think in a fast-paced world we can easily forget.
Yeah. Trent, I agree with you totally. I think this has given us a real opportunity to reset. I think it's given us such an opportunity to consider what's most important to us and then to make some choices about what we're going to do with that. I come from a strengths-based positive background myself. And, one of the things that we want to be thinking about with COVID-19, with coronavirus is, and this is what we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to last for, but what we do know, and actually I'm just saying what you've just said, we have choice about how we respond, and that's not about pretending everything's fantastic and everything's, just amazing, because that would be naive. But it's saying it is what it is. This is the situation we find ourselves in, and this is what I choose to do.
Choice.
And that's, and that links from a psychological well-being point of view, and now I'm going off track, that links really closely to optimism and hope.
Yes.
Because hope is about, this is where I am right now, and I want to get, point A is where I am, I want to get to point B. What actions am I going to take to get to point B? And knowing that some of those actions will work and some of them won't. So what am I going to do to keep myself motivated? So how do I give myself an agency to keep going?
Yeah. The bridge of hope we talk about here at Boom Sales, actually, the bridge of hope. A big shout out to Richard Late, one of our clients. He talks about selling hope. A very successful businessman in his own right, and he always says, all I'm doing is selling hope. Love it.
Wow.
The hope, the optimism.
I like that.
The choice element to what we're referring to there is almost a sense of buy-in and ownership, isn't it? When you have choices, you have ownership.
Yeah.
The ability to, even if you don't think you have options, you still have choices. I think that's a really powerful little nugget.
Yeah. And, think about today with COVID-19, we're being encouraged to self-isolate. We're now being told that really, if you choose to go out, there can be only a maximum of 2 people together, out on the streets, if you choose to leave your home. So I still have choice in that. There are boundaries that I've been given, but I have choice in that. I can still choose to go out or not. I can choose to go by myself or with one other. I can choose to bring my dogs. I can choose to stay home and somehow do, if I'm thinking about exercise, because that's what's on my brain at the moment, I can choose to exercise at home in some way. So even though there are boundaries, we always have choice.
It's perspective too, isn't it?
Tell me what you mean by perspective.
Well, it's being able to use your filter to see things in a certain way. You can choose to see it negative, or we can choose to see positivity, or we can choose to see, I guess, the alternative. But some examples of flying around on social media are people sort of having a go at others for saying they're trapped at home. When some people say, no, you're not trapped at home, you're safe at home.
Yeah.
And you're in a safe place and you're with your family. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's again, it's perspective and context. This is interesting because when you think about it, I'm making courageous choices, or I have made a conscious choice because of my values and how I want to operate in the world to choose to be courageous. And I might be conscious of that. But then I see others not making the same choices under similar situations. So how do we support our teams or the people we're around to be more courageous?
Okay. So we can intentionally develop the skills that I mentioned earlier. So, vulnerability, values, trust, and also resilience or well-being, we can also share stories of courage. We know that courage is contagious. Science actually shows us courage is contagious.
So is passion.
And we are absolutely. We are inspired to courage on hearing the courageous stories of others, and also on stopping to reflect on our own courageous stories of the past. And I'll share with you later a little exercise that you might like to direct people to, should they choose. So share stories of courage. I also encourage people to spot courage in others. So when you consider a courageous act, to actually give that person feedback on that, and kind of whatever your words are, wow, that was a courageous act, and really give them specifics about that. What did you see? What did you hear? Why do you deem it to be courageous? There's one of the things I've learned. I've interviewed about 50 something people now around courage, and every single person says, oh no, that's not courageous, that's just what I do. But when we've unpacked it, they've actually sat back and gone, oh, now that I think about it, that was courageous. And then that inspires them to courage again. Other ideas: lead by example, be courageous, reward courage, reward vulnerability. Vulnerability plays a huge role in courage. And I need to be really clear. Vulnerability is not disclosure. Vulnerability also has boundaries. But, if you see vulnerability, reward it. Make it psychologically safe to be vulnerable, to be courageous. And then do the opposite of all the barriers that were mentioned earlier.
That great advice, Dina. One thing I wanted to just snap off there was the importance of role modelling, and who do we learn courage from, and the importance of role models. Because you're talking about sharing stories of courage, so, giving examples of people doing things as part of that as well. So that can be a challenge sometimes. And, how do we find these people, to learn from if they're not around us?
Yeah. I would be encouraging people to even look to the media and see, and of course with media you're only going to get part of a story, but I would be encouraging people to think of who do they consider, who do they know of, whether it's through media, whether it's through reading, whether it's through world experience that have happened, that they consider to be courageous, and to be thinking about and unpack what they did. What did they do? How did they do it? Who enabled them? What were the conditions around which they were courageous? I honestly, if I think of Australia and what we're going through right now, I do think our state premiers, I think, Daniel Andrews here in Victoria has been very courageous. He has mandated things that Scott Morrison hasn't. If you look at even the state premiers of, whose names totally escape me, of South Australia and Queensland, who have closed the borders, that's something that our Prime Minister hasn't done. So there are people, I think you need to look. I think it's almost
they're there. You just need to look.
I'm going to. Absolutely.
They are there.
I can tell you of all the people that I have interviewed, and they are really diverse industries, diverse roles. Every single one of them has demonstrated courage. So they're out there, and I also truly, I know, I was about to say believe, I know we all have courage within. We just need to stop and think about it.
And now is a good time for that. Plenty of reflection time. One of the displays that I have seen, very very strong displays of courage, which links to leadership, is the New Zealand Prime Minister. Making a very tough call. Jacinda, unbelievably smart, compassionate, quirky. I talk a lot about quirkiness. He's got some quirk. And that's the best of the best of quirky. And she seems to have just been a beacon, a light in a very challenging time. And a lot of leaders in Australia could take a leaf out of her book, I think. I have joked about her coming across and running our country, or maybe doing both.
Oh, hey, I'd be up for that. Absolutely. I think we should be like, just part of New Zealand, just quietly.
Yeah. We can change our flag slightly and we're in business. Very nice. Love New Zealand, God's country. Hello to our New Zealand listeners as well. Quirky characters indeed. Well, I'm really enjoying this, Dina. I'm so grateful for your time today. I know you're moving house as well, and you've got a few things on your plate. But what attracts you to courage as a concept? So why are you so deeply immersed in this subject matter? And that's not on the run sheet, sorry.
No, that's all right. It all started from a group uni assignment. You know those group assignments that you go, really? Why are we doing a group assignment? Anyway, it was a group assignment in doing my Masters of Applied Positive Psychology. As a group, we were tasked to explore what courage is. And what I realised is that there's not enough science behind courage in workplaces. There's a lot of science about courage generally, but not in workplaces. At the same time, I was doing a lot of facilitation around developing authentic leaders. And what we found, 90% of the time is that people would leave the workshop and be absolutely committed to being an authentic leader. And then in subsequent coaching and subsequent workshops, what we found is that it's too hard. It's not valued. I'm coming up against barriers. And so I would ask the question, well, what do you need? And inevitably the word courage or a similar word would come up. At the same time, speaking with various CEOs, GMs in industry, they would talk about expectations of their executive leadership team and absolutely where they were meeting those expectations and where they weren't. And I would ask them the question, what's getting in the way? And they would say risk. And then I'd say, well, what do you need? And they'd say courage. So all these things kind of happened at the same time. And I just went, wow, even looking at the world as a planet and what's going on, with societal issues, whether it's global warming or homelessness or the Me Too movement or whatever it might be, I kind of went, we all need to be courageous. And that just set me off.
Then you're off on the journey, and
I'm off.
Yeah, and it is. I think you might have set me on the journey too now, Dina.
I'm pleased.
I think we
should all be on the journey, please. And look, seriously, my remit is to build courage, and the more people who are doing that, we can only be in a better place.
Oh, it's a thing of beauty. I think you're right, spot on, 100%. The world needs more courageous people. It needs more courageous role models. And I think as a parent, we're just really highly attuned to the importance of, building confidence in kids, but that has to, as they get into adults, they're going to have to learn courage. And I think that's something that I think to be able to live their true self. I was just thinking while you were talking about authentic leadership, and what popping into my head is you're saying there's people that were challenged by that. So one of the challenge would be, I am being authentic. Nobody likes me. Nobody actually likes who I really am. That's a problem. But being true to yourself, being true to your values does take courage.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important, particularly in today's climate, actually very much emphasised in today's climate, the importance of courage. We wanted to finish off today, Dina, with your 3 best tips for being courageous.
Okay. When you're considering whether you will or will not be courageous, stop and reflect. Make it an intentional act. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, know that you're not alone. When you're embarking on your courageous journey, tap into your greatest supporters and enablers. Bring them with you on that journey. And then tip number 3, and apologies to Gandhi, but be the courage you want to see in the world. we've talked about role models. Be that role model. Be that first one to take that first step. Be that role model for someone else. And that can be frightening, but that's okay, because we know that we can feel courageous and frightened at the same time.
Very good advice. Does not one or the other, is it? And to be courageous, there is risk and there is vulnerability.
Absolutely. And with that, it's really interesting. And, it seems intuitive. It is intuitive. But also the research, and I come back to Brené's research in this instance, her research of 150 C-suite leaders. So we're talking seriously senior people, for want of a better definition of the C-suite. We're talking about the leaders of, large organisations and small organisations, but we're talking about leaders here. I've said that really badly. What I'm trying to say is her research, every single one of them, when she asked them a question about, when you're courageous, and I can't remember her exact question, but she asked them about what other feeling they felt at the same time as when they were feeling courageous, and they said fear. 150 out of 150 said, we're fearful every day. We're fearful, that the risk associated, the outcome, etc. And these are amongst the most courageous people in the world as well.
That's great insight. Really,
and Trent, I've said that really badly. I think that needs editing.
I think you're underestimating how well you communicated that. I'd spot on, I think. It's feel the fear and do it anyway. Acting in despite of fear is courageous. Courage is a choice. To be more courageous, we need to reflect more. We need to be willing and open to getting the right feedback, constructive feedback, any feedback. Actually, a lot of people seek positive feedback all the time because it reinforces what they currently know. But if they're not seeking constructive feedback, they're not actually filling any gaps or learning anything new. It's just more validation. No. It's the validation form of feedback. Now, and there's some unbelievably courageous acts going on in our community right now. They're our role models. Your nurses, your fire volunteers, or people like yourself, Dan, who are very, very have a lot of conviction around getting a particular message out that's important to people. I think that's courageous as well. How do we find more or learn more about courage? You mentioned you had a resource or something there for us, Dina?
Absolutely. So our extension website, so there's the Insium website, which is just insium.com.au, but we also have our extension website, which is leadingwithcourage.com.au. And on there, you'll find interviews, you'll find blogs, you will find a number of different exercises, reflection exercises and resources. There is a particular exercise that I think will help people reflect on their own courage. And I'll send you the link to that, Trent. That might be the easiest thing to do.
And I will pop that in the comments on YouTube, and I'll pop that into the sections that we post the podcast as well, so they can get it from there also.
That'd be great. And Trent, we offer a number of different courageous workshops, whether it's Brené Brown's Dare to Lead as an accredited facilitator of her work, or Courageous Self, Courageous Feedback, Courageous Change. And in today's environment, we're actually offering those via Zoom as well. Awesome.
You must be busy, Dina.
A little.
Lots of work to do. What about, can we get social with you at all, Dina, in terms of...
Absolutely. Please do. You can follow me on Twitter at Courage Chick.
Courage Chick? Awesome.
Yeah, that's me. LinkedIn is just Dina Pozzo. And then if anyone wants to be in touch via email, dina@insium.com.au.
You are a very courageous chick, Dina.
Oh, thank you.
At Courage Chick. I like it. That's pretty cool. Hey, I'm not even following you on that handle, so I've got to get cracking on that. Dina, I wanted to say thank you so much for giving us your time and your insights today.
Thank you.
I would love to get you back on.
Thank you. I would love to. I could talk till the cows come home on courage. Okay. And I do really think we all have it, and there's ways to find it and ways to do it. And I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity, because this is another vehicle to get courage out there. So thank you.
Absolutely it is. Thanks, Dina, and stay safe, and look forward to catching up with you next time. You are important.
Thanks, Trent.
See you,
Thanks,
Dina.
everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
You've been listening to Not For The Average podcast with Trent Leishan. Trent is Managing Director of Boom Sales, Australia's #1 sales training and development company. If you'd like to accelerate your own sales growth and profitability, go to boomsales.com.au.